Episode 47 of the Star Wars News and That Timeline Show is here. Luke, another weekend, another episode of the Timeline Show. Recording this on a Saturday afternoon, 4:47 Eastern Time, as we're about to dive into Marvel's High Republic issues 6 through 10. Excited to get into some of the spreads on this one. I thought were excellent, like the way they blend the colors in with the different fights, because all of these all of these comics that have so many Jedi involved, because it's the High Republic era, having the more lightsabers the better. So I'm excited to talk about this. We got Dringir, Hut, Nihil, Jedi galore. It's going to be a fun time here on the Timeline Show, fresh off our live show Thursday night. We're welcome Tom into the sphere. But Luke, the Timeline Show is our domain. Are you ready to get after it today?
Absolutely. And I can also throw in my comment that, like, Tom's first time being this past Thursday, I thought he did a great job. So, like, if you haven't watched that, he was a wonderful addition to the live show. So I would love for you to, go give him his praises, because I like Tom. I think he did a great job. He's a great addition to the team. So
Absolutely.
I'm ready to get into this Marvel run. I know we've said in the past, definitely Tyler, you've said that I think you like the Dark Horse run a little better. But I'd like to say that I also do like the Marvel run. I think this is some good stuff. And I'll say, I think that the animation, the artists are pretty similar. I think on average, on any given issue throughout the Phase 1 runs, I think I actually might be more on the Marvel side. I think I might like this art a little more. I do like it a lot.
6 through 10 here that we're doing today, I agree with you. Like, to me, this was the sweet spot for the run.
This is pretty good.
Right here. Like, this was the best part of Phase 1's run with Marvel. I think Phase 2 Marvel High Republic Adventures, I think, blows Phase 2's Marvels out of the water, like Dark Horses. Like, I think it blows it out of the water. Phase 1 is very close. I might give 6 through 10 the nod as being better than High Republic Adventures 6 through 10. I think I would agree with you there, but from a whole, I'm still gonna have to go with Adventures. But right here, the run that we're about to talk about today is excellent. It's visually, some of the issues, we're gonna put them on the screen. Some of the spreads are visually stunning and are up there with some of the best, I think, with Star Wars in general, like just in terms of visual appeal, because of the way they capture the Great Progenitor, for example, and the number of lightsabers we see. So I really enjoy it. But in general, I would have to go the other way. But I'm glad that one of us is completely all on board. So we left off last time. The Jedi and the Hutts have this uneasy alliance to try to take out the Dringir. And, part of the issue, we also have Skier, who's currently battling possession by the Dringir. And I want to start not with all the crazy battles, but I want to start with like the most heartwarming portion of the episode, or of the, I keep saying episode, of the comic for me. And that was when like Keeve and Skier have this really beautiful moment. And as you can see here, I love like the color that they use for like what this Dringir mind looks like. So Keeve basically is reaching out through the Force to connect with Skier, trying to bring him back. And the Dringir are trying to take her kind of over as well. And Skier it's like this whole thing where he seems to be trapped inside his own mind, so to speak. The Dringir root mind is taking over. But the two of them like have this moment, and it says here like, "Oh, it's good to see you." And he's like, "This is not the Jedi way. I don't care. Neither do I." This is beautiful master and apprentice, former apprentice moment where she just is embracing him, and you see like the real love for each other come into play here.
Yes, I believe that. Also, I just want to say I love that that Cavan Scott takes the time to add in some completely just extra S's for Skier's his bubbles, because if you've ever listened to oh gosh, have you ever listened to an audio book or an
Mhm.
audio version of a book with Skier in it? Like the the person
They
is
do the yeah, they'll handle the Trandoshan stuff well.
so I like that that comes through here, and I believe this is during a time when he's being held in stasis, and she's kind of like going against the rules to going
Mhm.
protocol to like try to connect with him here. So
She releases the stasis field in order
yeah,
for her to them to have this connection, and ultimately she's able to help him break through because the
yes,
power of them together in the force is enough to break through, and they are both able to rejoin the fight. We know that Skier, though on his own right now, he has lost some of his connection to the force, or he's feeling distant, and we're not going to find out the answer to that in issues 6 through 10, but that's what happens essentially right after. We're going to close out phase 1 knowing exactly what's going on with Skier, which is important for us to as we continue to go further. But Keith's connection to the Dringear definitely are going to play a role, not only in just this issue, but as we go on. But she's ultimately going to be able to learn the location of the Great Progenitor. But I want to like go ahead and instead go to this one for a moment because, while all of that's going on with the Dringear, or sorry, with Skier and the Dringear and Kiev, there's this whole other literal battle, physical battle, not the spiritual battle taking place with Avar and the Huts, along with Terrat and Sarat, and they're taking on the fight to the Drigier on these worlds. And as you can see here, I mean, Avar's riding on the back of a Rancor. She is probably my favorite Jedi just in terms of the High Republic, in terms of the comics, because they do like Avar action sequences so well, and she has the unique force ability of bringing people together, which is handled well in the comics. So I love this scene here. She's just so there's just this elegance and grace that she has, while also she's not to be like messed with on the battlefield.
I think for the same reason, she's she's got to be one of your favorite Jedi, the reader. Like
Hmm.
she's kind of who the authors collectively use to give us action,
Right.
whether it be in Light of the Jedi or in the comics. Comics, she is oftentimes the one who's leading any kind of battle, any kind of charge,
Hmm.
and we get really good like emotional beats from Keeve, from Skier, from the rest of the crew, and Avar definitely has some emotional beats too, but like she's always in the heart of a
Hmm.
true like battle with her lightsaber out. Like I love that. I don't love that for her. I wish she maybe had a more peaceful life, but I love it as the reader seeing her just be a complete
Absolutely.
wonderful woman.
And so we see the Dringier sucking the nutrients out of the living beings here, and it's just so creepy the way that they do this. It's I'm trying to think of what it reminds me of. I don't remember if like do you remember? Oh my goodness, I feel like there's a level of those Geonosian zombie things like with the
Mm,
like the little worms that would get inside the clones in that one arc, but
right.
on a whole plant wide scale where they're dangling. There's something about it's kind of like when you would see the like an alien when they stick the alien comes in and like shoots through their like mouth sort of thing. Anything that has to do with like the plants, like the way their mouths are open and they're sticking the vines in and going into like the earlobes. It just gives me the creeps and the ick and everything. And this kind of freaks me out on a hardcore level.
Well, I'm with you there. I don't want my orifices touched in that type of way. That's completely it's just such a violation of the person for the
Mhm,
Drengir to just like take over and like in such a brutal way.
mhm.
It's just disgusting. So I feel for the characters.
And Kiev, in her vision, is able to see like a vision of the great progenitor. And if you just look at the image that's up here, the Great Progenitor, it's massive. I mean, it's like a mountain-sized Dringier plant with a giant mouth. I mean, it is insane, like the scale of the Great Progenitor in terms of like the other Dringier are much smaller. Like a Jedi's lightsaber would slice right through it, versus the Great Progenitor is the size of a large probably like Starship to some degree. Like, is it that massive? I mean, Skier is a huge person. It's like 1,000 of Skier would not make up the size of the great progenitor, it seems. And Keith is like able to get a glimpse into where their home planet is in wild space in order to go track it down, hunt it down, and take it out once and for all.
I love that the artists are able to give us scale here because the authors are great about the novels of this publishing initiative are very descriptive. They're
Right.
very good novels, but to see it with your own eyes, like I just can't get enough of this. It's this comic run has really just made me fall in love with comics, and it's made me devour almost all of the comics Star Wars has. And
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, the artists here, Gene T is just like no exception. I love what's going on here. The blue, um, it's crazy. It's crazy.
And that leads us to the last part of Key's vision from the first comic, and it's a vision of Avar Chris's remains, her skull, like her bones, lying here, having been completely sucked dry of all value, nutrients, whatever the Dringier want to say. Because, and you know, it's her. There's a few pieces of her blonde hair there, but like her, little amulet, like circlet that she wears, like on her,
Her
head with
diadem.
her diadem is right there, and very clear vision that she gets from the Dringier, like welcoming Avar Chris to come to their planet in order for them to seemingly kill her.
Yeah. This planet that they go to, it's in wild space, which I kind of love that we're gonna maybe get a few more stories exploring wild space. I
Mm-hmm.
like that there's this area of there's the world building of Star Wars is really good. So I like that there's this area that is like unexplored, too dangerous to explore. The only connection I even have is so minor, and it's like Thrawn is like kind of from wild space ish. So there's just weird things out there, and I love that
Mm-hmm.
this we get to learn one more thing that is out there, and that's these Drangir on the planet Mulita, which, if you read certain copies of Light of the Jedi, I believe the typo is still in there, and they didn't have it pinned down what the planet was. They'll call it Mutilla. They switched the T and the L. So it's just a little fun fact for you
Okay.
there at home.
I actually didn't know that, so I like that. So, there you go. So the seventh issue is called "Of Sith and Shadows," and you're like, "What the heck is happening here?" We have Keeve with a red lightsaber being, she's crossing blades with a red lightsaber, and I saw this one, and I'm like, "What on earth? Like, how are the Sith going to tie into a High Republic comic?" And I love the way they thread in the different stories together because we've covered Into the Dark. If you've read Into the Dark, you know the Sith originally trapped the Dringier and were the ones that they were originally fighting. And we get a look at what that was like when the Sith ultimately trapped them. And Keeve is experiencing this vision. It's like I guess, an after effect of her bonding with the Dringier, and she almost feels like what the Dringier great progenitor would have felt like at the time, like not able to move, being trapped. And we get a look at like a Sith Lord here saying the circle shall be forever. And we have like these idols that they imbue with the dark side of the Force in order to trap the Dringier, on the Amaxine station. And we're getting like a direct look into what that was. And I kind of enjoyed getting to see this, yes, from the Dringier's perspective, but also just having like a visual to go with the idols, going with what it looked like when the Sith trapped them. Because Into the Dark is a great book that I really enjoyed, but it's fun whenever you can have the comic side of things and your imagination of what you think it looked like is all right, and this is what the artists are telling me it looked like.
That's probably been one of my favorite things about the High Republic comics is that you will get a story talking about these things in a novel, and then the comic will
Mm-hmm.
show you that thing. And then we've covered that multiple times already talking about comics, but I really don't
Right.
get tired of it. I really love getting a visual of something that I made myself in my brain, and that's like, well, how close did that compare? I don't really care if I was wrong. I like seeing it here. And also just super interesting that the Sith are like 0% of the plot
Mhm.
in the High Republic.
Right.
We know that they're looming in the background, but
Mhm.
it's kind of juicy to get a little bit of like, well, they're kind of like a background, like
There.
their
Mhm.
influence in the past is kind of affecting the current day. It's not that the
Mhm.
current Sith are in the story, but
But
um,
and they're out there, and
you
they're
do.
hinted at multiple times in the High Republic. They're brought up as the ancient Sith, the ancient ones that we fought against and long extinct. They just little nuggets. Maybe it's almost every few books, not every book, but like every other book, like I mentioned, the Sith will get sprinkled in and as just an afterthought. And it's the perfect amount because you don't want the Sith to be taking on too much of a role, obviously, because the Jedi, they're supposed to be afterthoughts that haven't been thought about for thousands, of years. And the idea of the Sith being mentioned, though, occasionally, just in my opinion, elevates the Skywalker saga to a whole nother degree because this is what the High Republic does to me. It escalates the tragedy of the Jedi falling and the Sith taking over. The fact that we are getting the Jedi here at their peak, the fact that the Sith are an afterthought, that were thought to be completely gone, and you're seeing glimpses of what the galaxy is like when the Republic and the Jedi are able to respond the way they need to and what it would have been like before then, and to know what's going to happen eventually. Because it's one thing when in the prequels, like, oh, the Republic has stood for 1,000 years or whatever, or it's been 10,000 years since this happened, or and all of those things. But it's another thing to go into these time periods and see a galaxy not in civil war with a dark side force or the empire. It elevates to me the entire saga.
I agree with you. I think that's the point of the High Republic, in my opinion. I've even talked about there's some pillars it stands on. I think that's why it's so good is because it's not trying to be completely separated from the rest of Star Wars. It
Hmm.
is 200 years before the movies, but even something that removed in the timeline um, still majorly
Hmm.
gives you a better understanding of what has happened in the tragedy of the fall of the Republic, the fall of Jedi
Right.
Order. So, um, seeing how good they are here lets you feel how bad you're supposed to feel watching
Hmm.
Revenge of the Sith, which
Right.
is coming back to theaters this year.
Let's go. Just a couple weeks. The only other main interesting like spread I had from this one, not that there weren't more, but in terms of like the main story beats, is Kiev was hesitant to go back into the field after her experience with the Dringir and these visions she'd had. And she ends up in the field and is paralyzed by fear and almost gets killed by some Nihil attacking the station. If it's not for our good friend, speaking of Into the Dark, Orla Jurini, a
Mm,
Wayseeker, who is just a total badass. I mean, she is a fantastic Jedi from the standpoint of she's this way seeker that just goes where the force leads her. And she very much is like, I'm not going to listen to the council necessarily or what other Jedi tell me I think I should be doing. I'm completely marching to the beat of my own drum. And there's a certain wisdom that she has that isn't like your general, wisdom that might come from someone like Yoda, but she offers like a different kind of wisdom that she imparts to several Jedi that we meet along our journey. Like when you think about the lives that she touches, like obviously here we see her impacting Kiev in a strong way. We know that her and Comac have a connection that she helps
mm.
him with. And then later on, when we read The Fallen Star here in about 3 or 4 weeks on the timeline show, we know that her and Elzar Mann absolutely have a deep connection that helps him become the Jedi that he ultimately needs to be on that book. And spoilers. And so here we see her, and I love the fact that she was in a vision that Kiev had, but Orla sees Kiev and says that you're the one I was supposed to find because I just go where the force leads. And I felt that, she felt a distress call in the force essentially from Kiev and answered that call, which is to me the pinnacle of what a Jedi is supposed to be. And the way seekers and the loss of way seekers as it goes on is a big reason why I think the Jedi Order ends up becoming what it is.
Fantastic point that I wish more Star Wars fans took part in or understood. I know not everybody has the time to read so much stuff that the High Republic has, but I wish that everybody who consider themselves in any part a Star Wars fan had the time to really dive into this stuff because it just enriches Star Wars so much. And the Wayseeker idea is beautiful. It's awesome. And it dates back super long time and it's lost. We don't see those in the prequels. We're not told about them. But my goodness, just the pureness of what a Wayseeker is just following the Force. I'm not going to follow the Order anymore. I need to follow the Force solely. And I'm like, I think about that as I'm reading these stories and I'm like, isn't that what they like everybody should be doing all the time as a Jedi? I'm like, why is the Order not implementing the like everybody has like a Wayseeker period or like some kind of, portion of their role is to be a Wayseeker. I love it.
I love that idea. That's like that's a good like half-baked Star Wars idea. Like what would a period of time that you are forced to be a Wayseeker? Which this is an interesting. No, it's an interesting point. Like, do you pass your trials? You become a knight, and then you have this, 2 or 3 year time period, depending on your species. How long your species lives. Because like, what's his face that we did? Master Orbitek lives 1,000 years. Maybe he needs 20 years as a Wayseeker versus a human who lives 100 years. Maybe in Star Wars needs just a couple of years as a Wayseeker where you're simply, okay, now I'm a knight. I've passed my trials. Where is the Force leading me next? And you go where you're called. You do what you're called to do. But on the flip side, if you're forcing someone to be a Wayseeker, is that also going against the intrinsic nature of being a Wayseeker, which is you listen to the Force's call to become a Wayseeker. If I'm forced to become a Wayseeker, and that's not what the Force is calling me to do right now, is that actually antithetical to what choosing to become a Wayseeker is? I don't know. This is why this is like a nice half-baked idea. Someone might say that the transfer portal in like college sports, like being a Wayseeker is like entering into the transfer portal. Like I'm entering into the Force transfer portal right now because I'm like following where the Force leads. I'm going where the best NIL Force package is in the galaxy right now.
I love that. I would hope that the Order was maybe in a more healthy spot like 1,000 years ago to where like a high percentage of people wanted to be Wayseekers. But even Orla, I was going to bring up, she even struggles with the fact that like, did she just choose this because she doesn't like rules as much? Or does she actually feel called by the Force to be a Wayseeker? And so that's something you have to parse out for yourself. That's it's part of the struggle. It's a different type of hard than, what you're going to find in other places.
So issue 8 here, the Root of Terror. We see Keeve.
I did have one thing from issue 7. One last just random thing. We have a panel that is Keeve in this meditation chamber, and what you just saw is that symbol that is in Luke's Jedi temple on Octo. That is,
oh my goodness.
That is what you see. It's the light and dark, and I
love that.
I can't get enough of the connections between sequel trilogy and High Republic and stuff. I love it.
No, that's a good catch. That's a good catch for sure. Let me remove this. Oops, I actually booted you for a second, Luke. That's
I got scared.
he said, what just happened? No. So anything else from issue 7 before we move on to the Root of Terror here?
I think we are ready to smash our way through the Root of Terror.
Okay, so we have Orla and Keeve that are going to go join the Jedi and Hutt forces on the progenitor home planet, or the great progenitor Dringir home planet, in order to, help once and for all solve this great problem of a great progenitor Dringir issue. But this issue was a lot of fun. There's a lot of stunning images on this one. But I want to find, here it is, finally. Like I had to, there we go. So this was like one of the first ones we get. And it just pops at you. so much to look at, and you just kind of jump to each corner. I mean, you have Skier riding on the back of a Rancor type creature. You have Colmac Vitus down there. You have Maraga the Hutt and all of her forces there. You have Reith Silas that's making his way in this one. You have, Teradid Seret. And there's just so much going on. And what's ironic about this too is we don't even see Avar right now, because we're like, wait, where is Avar? And we become concerned.
My goodness. But yeah, that's one of the most beautiful spreads we have. And I want to say there's also at the beginning of this issue, this is like the second page of my issue. The first page is Estala Maru. I feel like I'm kind of like his champion. Like, I love that guy. He's always going through the most, because he has to keep Starlight running.
Right.
And he's like floating, he's drinking his coffee. So to know that he's like going on with this like mental battle of keeping things organized and keeping the station running and not falling into chaos, that his fellow Jedi are in chaos. They are absolutely in the physical mortal danger. They're both experiencing kind of a similar thing in very different ways.
This is a good point on Estela Maru, because he doesn't get his flowers a lot of times, because he's basically, it's like if you've ever watched like NFL Red Zone, which is, for those of you who don't watch American football, NFL Red Zone is where all the games are on at once, basically, but there's one guy that is kind of walking you through each game, and it goes from this game, and then it'll switch to the next game if someone's about to score, then to another one. Estela Maru's like the guy in the background. There's a whole team behind this production that are helping that person navigate from game to game and keep within the flow of what's happening. Except Estela Maru doesn't have a team behind him helping him do that. He's like the whole team. He's having to navigate all of the outer rim and frontier to steer Starlight Beacon's resources the best way he can. And I love him for that, but he doesn't really get his flowers enough. But Keeve and Orla arrive on the planet just in time to help assist with everything that's going on. And we learn here that Chris is heading to the center to face the great progenitor once and for all by herself. Keeve knows this is a terrible idea given her vision, but the only thing to take away from this spread is the fact that Orla and Skier are flirting with one another, like hardcore flirting. And there's like allusions to like some sort of like sexual past with the two of them, even. And I'm not saying that did happen, or if this is just playful, flirtations, but it certainly makes Keith Trinus uncomfortable.
So after Keeve becomes acquainted with Orla and now knows that is who she's seeing in her visions, she called her like this ghost lady. They finally meet. They finally introduce themselves. So Keeve brings along Orla to this Mulita fight. And upon arriving, Keeve thinks she's introducing Orla to everyone for the first time. But Skier gets to say, we've met before, a long time ago. And Orla gets to say, that's one way of putting it, you're looking as handsome as ever, Guaculna. And Skier responds with, Orla, please, not in front of the Hutts. And I'm like, what is this?
What like the tone shift from being in this battle to doing this now, like having this dialogue, and then later, when it's talking about bringing Skier up to speed and all this and helping Skier, and I was like, oh, the pleasure will be mine, and not for the first time.
It makes me think of like loosely Solo, a Star Wars story, where it's someone's talking to L337, like, how does that work? She goes, oh, it works.
It works. That's so good. So we ended up, Avar is nearly taken over by the Great Progenitor, but it's not until Keeve is able to get there, and the Great Progenitor thinks that they have taken over Avar, and they want Avar because of her unique force ability to bring everyone together and connect the Jedi's power and focus in a way that no one else can. But because of this power is the reason why they're able to overcome the Great Progenitor, because, for the Force is light, the Force protects us, the Force is light, for the Force is strong, and they're able to connect together. And in this spread right here, you get a look at all of the different Jedi that are with them on this battle that are, through Avar able to join together. The song of the Force is too strong, and they're able to overpower the Great Progenitor. And I want to point out that I love the fact that even Skier is able to join in the song at this point. Like, his force abilities have not, and his connection have not been diminished, so that way he can't join his fellow Jedi. And I can't imagine that this didn't help strengthen him as well.
I have two things for you on this one. I like, maybe I'm making it out of thin air, but I think it's a little callback to the end of issue 6, where we have Keeve saying, "That's the trouble with telepathy." And Estella Maru finishes the saying with, "It cuts both ways."
Mm-hmm.
So trying to take her telepathy and use it against the Jedi, well, it's going to cut both ways. It's actually going to cut against you, Trained Ear.
That's a really good point. I love that, because the Jedi are able to do such great feats in the High Republic that they're not able to do in the prequel era. Like, the point where Mace Windu at one point says, "I think it's time to tell the Senate that our ability to use the Force is diminished." And yes, in the context of just the movies, you're thinking, okay, yeah, they're not able to use the Force. The Sith are starting to cloud their abilities. But when you look at the High Republic era and beyond, and you're able to see some of the incredible things that they were able to do because of their complete and utter devotion to the Force and just giving themselves over to it, to where they end up becoming, it adds adds so much context to that one line from Revenge of the Sith. And I think that, or was it Attack of the Clones? I think it's Attack of the Clones, actually. That one came in, because I think it's Attack of the Clones. So because Yoda, that's when him and Yoda are like, Mace Windu's like, "I'm going to take what Jedi I have left and go to Geonosis," and Yoda says, "I will go to Camino." So I think that's where it is. Yeah, that's on me. It's on me. I'll take one on the chin for that.
The other thing I wanted to say, if you could pull the spread back up, is there is a character who I don't know, and I wanted to see if you
hold on
did.
1 second. I literally just knocked it off
Oh,
because I had to make room for the others. But no, I have it right here.
This person in the bottom right, very bottom right, I don't know who that is.
So at first, I thought it was Elzar, but then I'm like, no, he's at the Republic Fair right now, so it couldn't possibly be him. And so I was hoping that you would know who that was, because that's the one person I was unaware of.
Man, that's a good question. Here we are supposed to be experts on this, but
right.
They're never, like, I would know who they are if they were mentioned by name in this comic. They're never even talked to. They don't have any lines or anything, so I don't know.
And it gets difficult too whenever there's the level of whenever's there. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's the level of when you read the books, you don't necessarily know exactly what they look like unless you look up the concept art, but it's not easy to find the concept art sometimes for all these characters, and there's so many of them that it's okay if one of them gets lost in the shuffle. So we continue on, though. They are able to trap the Great Progenitor, and it's a really cool image. I'll just put that up real quick. Like, they're able to trap it in this giant stasis field that encompasses the whole thing. And sometimes the only thing from this that is really important to take away is the fact that they are bringing the Great Progenitor to Starlight Beacon to keep there in like a stasis place, which shows you how massive Starlight Beacon has to be in order to have room just to put the Great Progenitor in storage.
That's the thing. The scaling of Star Wars is fun, just of fictional universes, honestly. So, like, sometimes you hear about like how big a Star Destroyer is, or Super Star Destroyer. And Starlight Beacon is one of those structures where it's like, this thing is like multiple New York cities, like multiple like massive structures together. So like, yes, this giant creature is going to
Mhm.
easily fit into one of their cargo
Right.
holds or something, which is
Mhm.
insane to think about.
But ultimately, the Hutts do not want to just lock up the great progenitor in
Mm,
stasis. They want to, but shocking, the Hutts are just
yeah.
like, no, we're going to absolutely just kill this thing and take it out. Which now the tables have turned, and now the Jedi are facing off against the Hutts in this moment where they're like, okay, the alliance then is over if you're going to do that, and we're going to protect the Dringir because we protect life, even the Dringir. And it was just like just a cool shot with all the Jedi lightsabers now turned to
Avar.
face off against the Hutts in protection of the Dringir.
Yes, I think this so embodies the Jedi that they are not there to like win wars and win battles. They're there to protect life. So they
Hmm.
are protecting huts
Right.
from the Drengir. Now it's time to switch the tables. Like they have that moral compass
Hmm.
that most people don't. That it is time to just like change what's going on in your mind and your heart. And now like I'm going to protect this life from
Hmm.
you. It's just the the moral compass is fantastic to see.
Absolutely. And then the issue ends with them trying to make contact with Estella Maru to figure out what's
Ah,
going on. Have they talked to Stellan? Have they talked about the Republic Fair again? And this is where, because this takes place so far before the Republic Fair, just like we talked about the comic run from last week, and it takes place before, and then it starts merging to after the Republic Fair, disaster, and boom, we get a little shot of the damage that Maru is seeing from Valo.
and I have to think how much fun Cavan Scott had writing this comic and getting to this point and being like, haha, I get to show the book I wrote too. So
Mm,
him just being able to have a lot of control over this specific crossover event where it's like
right.
he controls both ends of it. So I just it's terrifying and horrible to look
Mhm.
at, but he did it pretty well.
Absolutely, he did. Episode 9 or issue 9, Jedi No More. We see Keeve putting on the Nile armor, and this one was kind of like a setup and for the final issue essentially of, or not the final issue, but just like the 10th one, and we know like she's not joining the Nile, but she's trying to go undercover, and this is going to be about her initially, joining the Nile from a standpoint. But it all begins when she has to convince them that she is Nile, and is going to have to convince them in very explosive fashion. And so what we see is her actually fighting the Jedi and taking them on and trying to create like a makeshift storm ship in order for the Nile to think that this is in fact them. This takes place sometime after the Republic Fair. There's been a little bit of a time jump at this point, and Keeve is tired of sitting on her hands. Avar is tired of sitting on their hands. They want to take the fight to the Nile, and she's playing a dangerous game here. But in fact, we see what she's willing to do in this in order to take down the Nile, and some of that is a little scary.
I like that you mentioned that they're kind of tired of sitting on their hands. That is a point of contention we see in the previous couple comics, and definitely going forward here. That these actions from Kiev are kind of born out of being told, like, no, you need to take the diplomatic approach. We need to be careful. We need to be careful. We need to
Mm-hmm.
be careful. No, Kiev says, I'm taking this into my own hands. Like, who's coming with
Mm-hmm.
me? Let's go. Um, and this is what you see. She's going to take a huge risk becoming part of the Nile, trying to
Right.
convince them that she is. And so, yeah, she's going deep behind enemy lines here.
So we get her now with the Nile. She's trying to convince them that she's one of them. She claims that she was from Paneta's Tempest, who's no more,
Mm.
and they want her to prove that she's Nile by killing Miriaga the Hutt. Miriaga the Hutt knows exactly who Keith Trinus is and who Terret is. Is she with Terret or Seret? I'm blanking. The Bond twins.
That is just the best question you've ever asked. I
And while you find that, I will continue here. But he basically is like, "Oh my goodness, I'm." do I have to completely join the Nile in order to make them think that I'm part of the Nile? Am I being tested by I'm going to have to abandon everything it means to be a Jedi here? Is essentially what she's thinking, and kill a former ally of theirs out in cold blood and absolutely just slice her down when these people they were allies not that long ago. Granted, I hate saying granted, and then when it comes to killing someone, but granted, it's a hut, it's a hut cartel leader. So, there's worse people for the galaxy to lose at this point. But that's essentially where she's at, is she's trying to convince the Nile that she's one of them. But the one she uses the Force to kind of get out of it and create this situation where she doesn't have to make a decision to buy herself some time. But then it really just kind of brings up, this shot here where the real leader of this group comes into play. And this is, oh my gosh, now I'm blanking. What, Zeet, right?
Zetar.
Zetar, yes, Zeet. So he has this giant, it's almost like his own like Hulkbuster suit, if
Yeah.
are a Marvel
Yeah,
fan, that he
true.
sits in. He's a really tiny guy, but he's really good with tech. And he has his little warhammer there, his blaster on the other side. And he could cause some serious damage with this thing.
Absolutely. He's such a little pain in the side, even to the Nile
Hmm.
themselves. We get that from the Rising Storm. But gosh, I kind of get Paneta's, sentiment that he's this tiny little guy who really you could just squash on his own, but
Right.
he's got some tech. He's got weapons, so it's like
Like, you can't
I
knock it.
probably
You got
shouldn't
it where
mess
it
with
counts,
him.
kid.
Yeah.
No, but I like the fact that we get to see her have to choose what line she's gonna cross. It's
Gosh,
like in the
yeah.
TV show Survivor when you watch people trying not to lie all the time because they're like, I want to uphold my sense of honor and integrity. And then once push comes to shove, it's like, what are you willing to do for $1 million here? But obviously, just based on the cover, Out of Balance, Out of Time, issue 10, we know that they're going to get found out. And obviously, we knew they were going to get found out. It's just funny who's the one that, quote unquote, finds them out, which happens to end up being Maraca the Hutt, who, is going to out them by saying, you have Jedi in your midst and you don't even know it. But I honestly can't blame Maraca the Hutt for this, given the fact that the torture she's like put under, Maraca
Yeah.
the Hutt's put under in order for this to happen. Like, if you've ever wanted to see what the inside of a hut looks like, well, there you go.
If you've ever wanted to know the anatomy, hey, another thing comics gives you is like explanations for things you never wanted to know. But here you go. Um, my gosh, but yeah, just the fact that Keeve really didn't want to kill her probably wasn't going to, but
Right.
like Miyaga the Hut, like isn't a good person. So obviously she's trying to
Right.
save her own skin, and the best way she thinks to do that is give up Kyiv. Maybe the Nile will give
Mhm.
me a little bit of room to work with.
Mhm.
But I don't think the Nile would have ever let that happen either. So it's just a
Exactly.
lose-lose situation.
It's a lose-lose situation for all involved here. But the real big surprise of this comic, not necessarily a surprise to those of us that have been following, all the other stories as they've been going on. Of course, we're going to be covering Tempest Runner, next week. But the big one here is the fact that Lorna D, who they all think is dead. Granted, they all think she's the Eye of the Nile too, which we know
Yeah.
is far from the truth. But the real thing here is that Lorna D, very much alive and well, and they are shocked to see Lorna.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, she comes
I
back
thought
on the
that she
scene.
had fantastic entrance.
Yeah, she's one of those characters who really cares about being perceived as like BA. She wants to
Mm.
be the coolest person in the room, the toughest person in the room. She's got nerves of steel. So of course she's going to walk in with her cool as heck helmet, and she carries herself like she owns the place.
Mhm.
And sometimes that gets you far enough because clearly what happens now. she's got a box with a nameless creature in it, and so she
Mhm.
does kind of get to walk around like, yeah, these Jedi, I own them. They're
Mhm.
nothing to me, and
And
so I
she mentions
hate
that she's
that.
been wanting to test out the nameless effect, and the issue 10 literally ends with this little spread here
Oh,
of the beginning of a husking that we have seen at this point. At this point, we have not seen this very much. At this point, we saw what happened to Loden, but
no,
at this
yeah,
point, we really haven't seen this from in phase one, because obviously we've been through the timeline show. We've done phase two, and there's been a lot of Jedi that have been, husked at this point. But in the terms of where we're at from what we know about the High Republic in the phase one series, this is a brand new concept to us still. Like, we're still trying to figure out what this means.
yeah. Um, in some ways, even in phase three, we're still trying to figure out exactly what's going on. So it's a very
Mhm.
deep mystery. Um, and again, I was not able to figure out which twin is with which, but Tarot and Sarek. Um,
Mhm.
Tarek is one with the Force. So Tarek is with Heave.
Okay.
And
Sarah's with Keith. That means Sarah is the one in this image,
yes,
because they're with Avar, and you can see that they have their robes on,
yeah,
versus the other Bond twin is in the Nile garb. So here we have the robes and the husking effect, because they are one and the same.
Bond
Like, it's
twins.
the
Yeah.
Bond is the husking effect is affecting, what you said, Tarek, right?
Uh, yeah, Tarek
Yeah,
is
it's
with
affecting.
Keeve.
Okay, so it's affecting Sarah, even though he's you know light years away.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is just honestly like, thank you, Cavan Scott. It's a really cool concept that we just haven't had before. But the
Hmm.
fact that it's eating one is eating the other, that's heartbreaking because
Hmm.
Sarah doesn't really know what's going on at all. He's just being, they're just being
Yeah, the line here
dissolved.
that the line here that they say is, "There is only pain,"
There's
and
only pain.
absolutely. And that's a great place for us to end this episode of the Timeline Show with, "There is only pain."
There is
But
only
in
pain.
general, it was a great 5-issue arc for us to dive into. There's a lot to go there. I hope that you guys enjoyed this little quick dive through that. As always, you can check out the Timeline Show every weekend here on Star Wars Newsnet, wherever you get your podcast, over at Apple and Spotify. You can check us out every single weekend. Also, we will have a early week pod that will come out on Tuesday for you as well. So be waiting for the show on Tuesday, or again, another podcast coming your way on Tuesday every Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern Time, Star Wars Newsnet Live. Luke, appreciate you as always. What are we going to be talking about next Saturday for the Timeline Show?
Well, next Saturday should be Tempest Runner by Cavan Scott once again.
We're just on a big Cavan Scott kick for a while, I guess, because it's been a while, because we did Rising Storm, Cavan Scott, Monster Temple Keek, Cavan Scott the week before that.
Wow.
We've
Yeah.
done Comics Now, Cavan Scott. What was the only break I think we took was or Race to Crash Point Tower by, was it Justina Ireland, right?
Race to Crash Point Towers by Daniel Jose Older.
Oh, that's Daniel Jose Older. That's all I mean. And then I guess we did High Republic Adventures, Daniel Jose Older. But
Yeah.
I think 4 or 5 of the last 7 episodes of the Timeline Show will be Cavan Scott.
Yeah.
Friend of the
But
pod, Cavan Scott.
as we know, he is just a wonderful person to talk to. And we've done that
Mhm.
interview. It's back a couple videos on our page, but go watch it again. I loved talking to him. He's awesome.
This is a lot of fun. This is a lot of fun. So until next time, everyone, for Light and Life, and remember that we are all the Republic.